Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Virtual Ocean Dialogues session, New Horizons for Seafood Traceability, a leap forward for responsible supply chains. This session is hosted by the Global Dialogue on Seafood Traceability, also known by its acronym GDST. My name is David Shore. I'm the Senior Manager for Transparent Seas at WWF, based in Washington, D.C. I co-lead a multinational team formed by WWF in partnership with the Institute of Food Technologists. Together, we serve as the secretariat to the GDST. As you will hear, the GDST has brought together dozens of seafood supply chain companies around the world to create the first ever global standards for seafood traceability. I'd like to thank all of you for attending this Virtual Ocean Dialogue session. We have an excellent panel today, followed by questions and answers. If you have questions, please feel free to enter them throughout the webinar in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will address your questions after we have heard from all the presentations. So let's get going. We all know that seafood is essential to nourishing billions of people around the world, and that fishing and aquaculture employ hundreds of millions, many living in vulnerable coastal communities across our planet. We also know that seafood is one of the most heavily traded of all food commodities, with complex supply chains that crisscross the world. Given the enormous power of markets and market actors to influence how products are produced, nourishing billions sustainably, ethically, and equitably fundamentally requires responsible behaviors in seafood supply chains. But unfortunately, not all seafood supply chains are based on responsible practices. Illegal fishing, unsustainable fishing and aquaculture, and even the nightmare of slavery at sea remain realities that must be successfully confronted to achieve sustainability and equity. The good news is that industry, civil society, and governments have started stepping up to address these issues, and real progress is being made. Fisheries improvement projects are just one example of how the combination of science and community engagement can move us towards sustainable and equitable seafood. Other tools include the use of credible certification and labeling programs to support consumer choice. But this work can only succeed at scale if we have visibility through and across thousands of supply chains into the conditions of production where seafood originates. And that brings us to the issue of traceability. Traceability is the ability to know where your food comes from and how it was produced. It is a must-have for responsible seafood because it is what connects consumers and businesses to the ecosystems where our food grows and to the people who harvest it. Reflecting this just moments ago in his opening remarks to this Virtual Oceans Dialogue Nourishing Billions session, Dr. Chu Dongyu, the Director General of the FAO, noted the importance of improving information flow in the seafood sector. In this slide, the fishermen that you see in the upper right produce mahi-mahi in Peru for sale into the United States and Europe. When we visited them, they told us, we need traceabilidad. Why? So that their government would feel pressure to issue licenses to legalize their fishing, and so they could be less vulnerable to corrupt officials and middlemen. These fishers know that visibility to US and European consumers will bring them empowerment. Fortunately, the time is ripe for a quantum leap forward for seafood traceability. Modern information technologies have created unprecedented opportunities for collecting and sharing data about seafood production. Government policies to require traceability and proof of legality in seafood supply chains are gaining traction. But perhaps most important, companies within the seafood industry are increasingly working together to magnify their impact on business practices and on government policies. The GDST is one such initiative with its focus on a new set of transformative traceability standards. Two others are the Global Tuna Alliance, or GTA, and the Seafood Business for Ocean Stewardship, or CBOS. Our panelists today come from three companies involved in this work. We will start with Ben Shepard of Tomorrow Explored, a company showing us how innovative information technology can be harnessed for both environmental stewardship and livelihoods. Ben will start with a short video. After Ben, Tracy Linder of WWF will give some brief background on the GDST and a glimpse at the new GDST standards. Next, Tom Pickerel, Executive Director of the GTA, will speak alongside Andrea Weber and Britta Gallus of the major multinational wholesaler retailer Metro AG. Andrea is chair of the GTA, and Britta is the industry co-chair of the GDST. Finally, Roxanne Naninga, who leads sustainability for the Thai Union Group in North America, will speak from the perspective of one of the world's largest seafood producing companies and a leading member of both CBOS and the GDST. Thank you all very much. Please remember to fill in your questions at the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, which we'll answer later. And we'll now turn to the video from Ben's company.
Lalo na po mga pinyana ng tao, mga 52 na ako, mga sobra ng 30. Nagpaparaluyo naman talaga ng paghahanap sila sa mismong kadakulang kang paghahanap.
It's really a big problem with overfishing. With overfishing, you deplete the resources, thus it will affect the livelihood of our fishers. Our fisheries will collapse, and if our fisheries will collapse, then no more livelihood for the fishermen and no fish for us. WWF, through our fishery improvement projects and other civil societies together with the national government BFAR, we are really requiring to have a municipal catch documentation guidelines so that we can able to collect reliable and timely catch production data. There's this data gap. That's really the problem of getting data. Right now, what we have is a paper-based, and we want to have electronic catch documentation. That's why we are collaborating with different providers like Streamer.
The challenge around getting good catch data involves a number of different factors. If these fisher folk gather data on where they're catching fish, how much they're selling it for, all that information that relates to the fish, that has some value to it. But currently, fisher folk aren't incentivized to share that data in any way. As well as there being a willingness to share the data, they also need the tools and the technology to do so. So Streamer brings a unique opportunity. We can help fisher folk monetize that data and share it with parties of their choosing and sell it at a price that they want to sell it at. And they can get the full return of that. No one's forcing their hand. This is their choice and they're in control of their data. Community products can facilitate the payment back to those that have participated in giving data to this crowdsourced fisheries product. If we take Sarangani Bay in the Philippines, where we know that the fish stocks are now diminishing, if we had every fisher folk within that area sharing their data on whereabouts they're catching the fish, the size of the fish, the quality of the fish, what they're selling it for, and we pushed all of that data into a community product, we could create a product that would give a really good overview of the fish stock levels covering Sarangani Bay. All of those fisher folk would get rewarded for sharing that information. All sorts of different parties might be interested in getting access to data that's not currently available. It could be an NGO, it could be a donor agency, governments, and the fisher folk have told us in our interviews today, we'll share the data, just reward us for it. The Philippines holds a very dear spot in my heart, and I'm married to a Filipina who's actually from this part of the country as well. So that being involved in this project is a very important thing to me.
This would become a very exciting project because this is new to us. This is an innovation. So if we can provide some economic benefits from that, like monetize data collection or like giving them access to loans, because this has been their problems also, then that would help their livelihood.
That information acquired in a common data platform makes it possible for us to bank the unbanked, to be able to provide credit at the appropriate price. With that, we hope this experimentation that we do with world-class partners begins to explore the many opportunities of a collaborative commons of collecting data, of using emerging technologies like IoT and blockchain to actually make a difference, to elevate lives, and to make a dent at our goal of bringing inclusive prosperity to the countryside.
This solution is going to do a lot of good, not just in the Philippines. If we can scale it globally, it can really help this micro SME market all over the world. It's about helping bank the unbanked. And this is where the power of data can really make a difference.
Hi everyone, Ben Shepherd here, Managing Director of TX Tomorrow Explored. I hope everyone's keeping safe and well and enjoyed our video there on the Tracy project. So through Tracy, essentially what we aim to do is rebalance the economic incentives across the supply chain by delivering a fairer share of income to fisher folk and to give them access to institutional finance. And we view traceability as a means to increase market access, to increase product value, and to increase the visibility of local producer communities to a global audience. So we believe we've made this possible with Tracy, your traceability and trade data companion. When you boil sort of Tracy down to what it is, it's an application for capturing and disseminating traceability and trade data. It's integrated to the Streamer technology stack, which allows us to unlock new ways of monetizing data. Tracy doesn't try to be a full traceability solution, but it's instead designed to connect with other traceability solutions. And the GDST standards have made this much easier for us now because of this easier interoperability with these other well-established systems that are out there. And those well-established systems are doing a great job from processor to play. What we wanted to do with Tracy is solve the issues in the first mile. So our focus is bait to processor, getting verified data in those early activities of the supply chain. There's been a problem space for many traceability solutions. And there's a range of reasons why. You know, the cost of accessing the traceability solution might be too high for the fisher folk, or there might be a lack of financial incentives that, you know, might limit the motivation of the fisher folk to use these technologies. But Tracy solves this. And by utilizing the GDST standard, as I said, interoperability with other applications, using that standard is made easy. Through Tracy, fisher folk are incentivized to capture verified catch and trade data, which is saved into a blockchain. We replicated the entire GDST standard set of key data elements at the different stages we're concerned with in that value chain. So this includes data on vessel monitoring and location, catch location, type of catch. We also held some fantastic meetings with Union Bank of the Philippines to understand what data do they need to be able to start to ascertain creditworthiness of unbanked individuals. So we've built that into Tracy as well. The data captured by Tracy is made accessible in the Streamer data marketplace. So long as you're willing to pay to access that data, it's there and available. What's important to highlight here though is Streamer doesn't now own this data. The Streamer data marketplace is a decentralized application that uses a decentralized peer-to-peer network for data transportation and delivery. And what that means essentially is the fisher folk remain in control of their data. They own it, they decide who can access it, and they decide how much they want to sell it for. By introducing incentivization to traceability, our aim is to improve the quality of data captured and shared by fisher folk. And the first mile of data is arguably the most important, because with this data, we can do so many amazing things. We can better manage fish stocks and act sustainably. We can give greater support around fisher folk welfare, and we can improve the livelihoods and deliver financial inclusion to fisher folk. Those existing economic imbalances in the supply chain, that means sharing quality data on traceability of catch, doesn't deliver that sufficient return on effort for fisher folk, can be flipped on its head now. And we can deal with that by unlocking the value of data. You know, the short-term consequences being, you know, if the fisher folk share good data on where they've been fishing. It could be that a particular area has been overfished, and they may have to have a period where they're not able to fish for a while now. That's going to have an impact on them and their livelihoods. What we've done with Tracy is we've recognized data as an asset, we've monetized that data, and now we give the fisher folk access to finance in two ways. One, microfinance with institutional finance institutes that can ascertain the creditworthiness of these unbanked individuals and offer microloans. And two, by directly connecting the fisher folk with the end retailers and consumers who can reward the fisher folk directly for sharing good data. So for those involved in using Tracy, it's a win-win-win situation. Small scale fisher folk get access to global markets and finance. Retail chains get access to complete sets of traceability data and can potentially sell their products at a premium. Governments can use this data to better set catch limits on fishing grounds. And we've achieved all this by engineering a data economy, by realizing that data is an asset and unlocking the value that surrounds it. Thank you for listening to me. I'm now going to hand over to Tracy, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Thank you, Ben, and hello, everybody. My name is Tracy Linder, and my role is Manager Global Seafood Traceability at WWF. As we all know, especially in today's world, information is power. And in the seafood sector, one of the many ways that we're harnessing that power is the work that we're doing through the Global Dialogue on Seafood Traceability. Our goal is to help connect people with the information they need to manage resources, earn livelihoods, and feed their families sustainably. There's no one approach to addressing the problem of illegal fishing and trade, but the one thing that all stakeholders need is data. The seafood industry faces one major roadblock preventing large-scale data sharing, and it's not a unique one. The mobile phone industry had to solve this problem, and the solution revolutionized the healthcare industry. And thankfully, it's now about to break through the seafood sector. So interoperability, which you've heard a few times now, is a big word for a simple idea that systems need to be able to communicate with one another seamlessly and in real time. So you can use your iPhone on the AT&T network to call a friend on their Android operating on Verizon's network. This is a common example of system interoperability and what we're aiming to achieve within the seafood industry. But to make this happen for the industry, the foundation had to be built for sharing data across systems, and that meant defining what data should be collected and shared, by whom, and importantly, how. So through the Global Dialogue, World Wildlife Fund and our partners helped to make that happen. The GDST was first conceptualized in 2013 within conversations among NGOs, government, and industry within the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on Oceans. And this was with active leadership from WWF and the major German wholesaler and retailer Metro AG. The need for a global framework for interoperability was then developed through an expert panel convened by WWF, which included Metro, along with the Global Food Traceability Center, which is part of a food science organization called the Institute of Food Technologists, which I will call IFT for short. After 2 years of consultations carried out with industry actors around the world, the GDST was officially launched in April of 2017, with WWF and IFT serving as the conveners and facilitators. And it's quickly grown into a major international industry platform with membership including many of the largest and most influential companies in the sector, representing over $35 billion in annual seafood production value. It's attracted members from around the globe with strong geographic diversity, representation across the entire seafood supply chain, and members at all scales of business. And over the course of nearly 3 years, more than 6 companies engaged in an intensive process of online consultations and in-person meetings supported by WWF and IFT, who held the drafting pens of the products. The result is now a robust set of ready-to-use technical standards that are already being hailed as a game changer for the sector. The standards, which we call GDST 1.0, provide a basic universal list of key data elements that are associated with all seafood products and technical guidelines for system interoperability. The importance of standardized key data elements is fundamental, and GDST 1.0 sets a basic standard for what information is collected throughout the supply chain as seafood is harvested and traded. The standards also include extensive technical guidelines on data formatting and exchange. And these guidelines provide the instructions for systems to be able to communicate with one another, removing the barriers that currently have many IT systems operating within commercial silos. And the good news is that GDST 1.0 is flexible and adaptable to serve those that work in small-scale fisheries and may still be collecting and sharing data on paper, to those that use the most advanced systems that are operating on blockchain solutions. And the standards go beyond the exchange of data between businesses, as they're also intended to help encourage harmonization of policies and regulations. Regulatory alignment means easier data exchange between industry and governments, a level playing field for all seafood companies, and improved opportunities for governments to verify the data on products entering their markets. In fact, when we delivered these standards this past March, there was an instant groundswell of industry support. This has included in a short time frame over 40 brands that have now publicly pledged to implement the standards, in addition to a large group of technology vendors who promise to develop traceability systems that will greatly help companies comply with GDST 1.0. These standards will deliver significant value when the seafood industry widely implements them. So we need companies to adopt the GDST and give a clear public message that these standards are the way forward for interoperable seafood traceability. So thank you all for joining. Please visit our website listed here to learn more about how the GDST can support your work. And I will turn it over now to Tom Pickerel from the Global Tuna Alliance.
Just before you start speaking, let me remind people that they're free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of their screens to write any questions they would like the panel to address later. Tom, take it away.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm delighted to be here representing the Global Tuna Alliance. The Global Tuna Alliance, or the GTA, as it's more commonly referred to, is an independent group of retailers and supply chain companies working to ensure that tuna ultimately meets the highest standards of environmental and social performance. Now, the GTA was originally established back in 2017 in response to the failures of RFMOs to manage high seas tuna fisheries properly. And that's led to significant obstacles to companies meeting their own seafood sourcing policies. Around about the same time, in 2017, the World Economic Forum launched the Tuna 2020 trade, includes engagement with RFMOs to develop harvest strategies. And so there was this overlap in the aims and ambitions of the Tuna Traceability Declaration and what the Global Tuna Alliance was set up to achieve. And accordingly, the World Economic Forum has fully funded the Global Tuna Alliance from September of 2019 all the way through to December of this year to expand our scope and to implement the Tuna 2020 Traceability Declaration commitments. Now, the World Economic Forum also supports Friends of Ocean Action, who have been organizing the Virtual Ocean Dialogues, regulated fishery program that they're engaged in. Now, the work of the Global Tuna Alliance supports this through our expanded scope and our shared goals. So this is just a little bit of a complex slide here to just demonstrate the interrelationships between these organizations. The Tuna 2020 Traceability Declaration is a non-legally binding declaration that grew out of dialogue among governments, companies, civil society organizations, spurred on by the Oceans Conference in June 2017 in New York. It focuses on the implementation of SDG 14, or one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The declaration was actually signed by 66 companies, including retailers and other tuna supply chain businesses, with the aim of stopping illegal tuna getting to the market, but also promoting improvements in the environmental sustainability and human rights of people involved in the tuna fishing industry. There are 4 commitments within the declaration, as you can see here: traceability, social responsibility, environmental sustainability, and government partnerships. To support the declaration signatories in meeting each of these commitments, we've been doing a number of different endeavors through the Global Tuna Alliance. Firstly, we've been running a whole webinar series since the turn of the year. We've had 17 to date. David has actually presented on GDST, for example. We're also producing 4 toolkits. Each of these toolkits will be focused on the commitment, the relevant commitment, and will include information on how companies, the tuna traceability signatory declarations, can make progress on each of these commitments. You'll see here, this is the traceability toolkit, which I'm delighted to say is going to be formally launched today. Great timing. And that's built around GDST. So you can see here, we've actually got 5 separate requirements or recommendations for companies, and these are built around. Now, when the GDST was launched in March of this year, the GTA discussed this and agreed as an organization to endorse the standards. This took place just the day after the formal launch. So we're delighted to be one of the major stakeholders that supports the GTST. And accordingly, what this means is, as well as the toolkit being of relevance to the signatories of the declaration, it's also highly relevant to GTA partners as well. Now, moving on slightly away from the GDST, but linked to it, one of the areas that we're also engaging under the government partnership commitment is the Port State Measures Agreement, or PSMA. So this is something that the GTA plus the Tuna Traceability Declaration signatories are involved in making progress on. The PSMA aligned standards can form a key link in the traceability chain. It is incredibly important. By combating supply chain requirements through GDST, for example, and regulatory requirements through things like Port State Measures Agreement, we can really reduce the opportunities for IUU fishing, which again links back into the work we're doing with Friends of Ocean Action. So it's hugely important for us to have this a combination of industry standards and regulatory. I'm now delighted to be able to hand over to Metro, which are, as David mentioned, Metro are partners of GTA, and also Andrea is the chair of our steering committee. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. And hello, everybody. Glad to be here today. I'm Andrea Weber, and I'm Director Corporate Responsibility at Metro. I focus there on sustainable sourcing and responsible supply chains, and my expertise is in fish and seafood. I'm based in Düsseldorf, Germany. Metro, with its wholesale business, is globally represented in 24 countries with 678 locations. And in addition is active in 10 more countries in this delivery business. We at Metro are passionate about food, and so are our customers. We serve more than 21 million customers worldwide. These customers are professional customers, hotels, restaurants, catering. These professionals make actually their living with our products. They take very informed buying decisions, and they know exactly what they want. A recent customer survey proved that the customers want to know where the products come from, and they expect this information to come from Metro, who is trusted as their key partner to do it right. A core offer and USP of our business is seafood. We sell 200,000 tons of various species of fish every year worldwide, with a global turnover of 1.3 billion euro. We are one of the leading fish wholesalers in Europe. Seafood is, as we've heard during the Virtual Ocean Conference, a key source of protein for the future. And we want to secure a sustainable future, which will also deliver successful business for our customers, our suppliers, and for us as Metro. Therefore, we have defined a fish and seafood action plan with sustainable criteria for procurement. And being in partnerships is one key pillar here. Giving you one example, Tuna is one of our top 3 best-selling species, and it has a challenging supply chain. So there was no question that we would sign the Tuna 2020 Traceability Declaration Tom just mentioned in 2017, together with 65 other key players in the tuna industry. Our aim was, and still is, to make tuna supply chains legal, sustainable, and transparent. And we knew when we signed the declaration that it wouldn't be easy to meet these 4 commitments. We were certain that we could not do it alone. We believe in a collaborative approach, in partnerships. This is why we were a founding member and why we are fully committed to the Global Tuna Alliance as well as to GDST. Tom just described the 4 focus areas of GTA. GTA supports us as Metro in implementing the Tuna Declaration by giving tangible toolkits. It gives companies the power and the voice to address challenges and gaps and helps us to move beyond the status quo. And GTA is an important link between existing initiatives. We don't want to double our effort. We want to make our efforts stronger by highlighting and empowering what's already there, like the excellent work GDST is already doing. This is also the reason why I am engaged in GTA as the chair of the steering board, because my personal belief is that we can only achieve our goals when we act together in a global, non-competitive, shared approach to make seafood supply chains sustainable, transparent in the future. So may I also encourage all of you that are listening today to join these initiatives, GTA as well as the Global Dialogue on Seafood Traceability. And now I would like to hand over to my colleague Britta, who will tell you more about Metro's engagement in GDST.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm Britta Gallus, and I work at Metro as Head of Corporate Responsibility and Transparency. So we started in Metro already some years ago with the implementation of the digital traceability solution for seafood in order to contribute to the prevention of IUU and at the same time to help protecting this important resource. From the beginning on, we supported GDST intensively. It's a great community approach which connects industries along the supply chain and countries all over the globe. Based on our experience, we know that a successful traceability approach needs alignment in the sector and a simple way to exchange information. Both preconditions are provided with the GDST standards. Alignment on key data elements and critical tracking events were accomplished in working group sessions with lots of companies participating. This cross-industry-wide dialogue, following the principle of consensus, led to a aligned list of attributes and definitions. Same process was choosing regarding the technical aspects. And the result is the technical implementation guidance, which helps to make effective data exchange and interoperability happen. These standards enable supply chain partners to implement end-to-end seafood traceability. And end-to-end seafood traceability will become even more relevant in the future. It is quite clear that regulatory requirements for seafood traceability will increase substantially. Electronic data exchange in the supply chain and digitalized traceability are already in the legislative pipeline in the EU. At the same time, we expect that the number of solutions will grow. Therefore, international industry standards providing guidance, standards, and tools for connecting existing solutions and providing easy access to information are necessary. Now, it's about implementation on an international level. Sourcing of seafood in Metro is done locally by our countries and via our trading offices in Hong Kong and France. With 24 countries and sometimes up to hundreds of suppliers per country, our supplier structure is complex. If all supply chain partners commit to follow the same standards and speak the same digital language, seamless data flow will become reality. A broad and international implementation of standards is necessary. For Metro, GDST 1.0 is the guidance and the standards which will be used to enhance and to improve the already existing approach. We are adjusting now our policies and include the GDST standards, and we will start using it for the implementation of the 2020 Tuna Traceability Declaration, where traceability is a huge component. That means reaching out to suppliers, making them familiar with the standards, and asking them to deliver information in a good quality. At the same time, we give them the opportunity to present themselves and their way how to do sustainable business. We as Metro are aiming for more sustainable seafood. We want to contribute significantly to the protection of our oceans and the resources. So we want to make supply chains more transparent, leading to more sustainable products around the world. Now I will pass the spotlight to Roxanne.
All right, thank you, Britta, and thank you everyone for joining the call today. I am Roxanne Ninga, and I'm the Sustainability Director for Thai Union in North America. I oversee the implementation of our global seafood strategy for our American-based companies of Chicken of the Sea and U.S. Nutrition. Thai Union joined the Seafood Business for Ocean Stewards, or CBOS, in 2016. We recognized that as one of the world's largest seafood companies, we're a global force with the power to significantly contribute to resilient plant and healthy marine ecosystems. Alongside these 9 other companies, we operate over 100 countries, purchase 200 species, and employ hundreds of thousands of people. The CBOS seafood business, science, wild fisheries to aquaculture, and come to one another. Our ambition is to lead a global transformation toward sustainable seafood production and a healthy ocean. CBOS is organized into 6 priority task forces. It is a leading company in the Improving Traceability Task Force because we view it as foundational to supporting human rights and environmental protection throughout the entire seafood industry. So I'd like to actually spend some time sharing examples with you about what this looks like in practice and how we're pushing innovation in this space. One of our suppliers of pasture crab, located in Sri Lanka, illustrates what's possible when the industry, government, and civil society work to put the environment first. So this region of West Sri Lanka, the civil war, which left the communities with almost no economic opportunity. And during this time, the blue swimming crab were not being fished commercially at all, and so the ecosystem and the crab population flourished. When the conflict ended and the commercial fishing reopened, there was a new opportunity to establish a system that benefited everyone. The supplier there, Tapper-Bain Seafood, engaged with the local organization and government to establish a fishery improvement project in the fishery. They put in data collection and fisheries management measures to control fishing effort and keep the resource abundant so they could continue to build their livelihood from it into the future. Today, the fishery and the plants support the majority of people in the region. The men typically work on the fishing vessels and the women work in the picking stations and the processing plants. And through all of their hard work in the fishery improvement project, the fishery was recently deemed a yellow good alternative by the Aquarium Seafood Watch recommendation. This small-scale fishery is in their capabilities, providing information for each step in the production process down to the level of boat and the landing site. This degree of traceability provides connectivity in both directions. It allows the communities to connect to the international market, provides assurance to everyone in the supply chain about the labor and the environmental conditions about production, and it connects seafood consumers to the story, the can of the crab they. Okay, and on the next example, I'll share with you a pilot. The Thai Union looks towards the future innovations in traceability and connectivity. So for this pilot, we partnered with USAID, our customer Mars Pet Care, and 2 technology companies to place satellite internet aboard fishing vessels. One objective was to improve data collection and catch documentation to combat IUU fishing. The other objective was to provide a connection for workers to land. So we created a mobile app that let the crew talk directly with their loved ones on shore, giving them a voice, the power to not be anonymous or lost at sea, and a morale simply by being in touch with the people that they love while they're away. And this worker voice component of the pilot was really successful. Thailand has since incorporated worker voice into its national labor laws. So as I've described, Thai Union sees traceability as the backbone of our entire sustainability strategy and core to our business. Setting benchmarks for responsible sourcing and meeting them is a huge undertaking, and all of it rests on being able to access reliable information from our source fisheries and farms. Knowing the source of each product enables us to meet our responsible sourcing commitments and gives us sight into the labor conditions in our supply chains. To build traceability through our own vertically integrated operations, we work closely with our processing plants to harmonize the data we collect and pass along from production all the way to final sale. To do this, we use unique lot codes that correspond to the catch certificate and follows the fish through the fishery, where it's printed onto products so that consumers can access the information on Thai Union websites. But at Thai Union, we manage a very high degree of complexity in our supply chain, like Metro. So we source from large and small scale farms and fisheries across the globe for products as diverse as tuna, anchovies, crab, salmon, and many others. We don't have vertical integration over many of these supply chains, and the seafood industry in general is highly fragmented between multiple companies at different levels of the supply chain. Integrate data across all of these system geographies requires a lot of cooperation and a unified technical standard. This is why Thai Union joined the Global Dialogue on Seafood Traceability. This pre-competitive industry has worked together to form standards for an established set of key data elements for each step of the supply chain, as well as the technical provisions for making software systems interoperable so that data can move between systems. These are critical tools for the seafood industry to establish a universal traceability standard. And Thai Union has been involved in things like pilots, hackathons, provided technical support, and now we're involved in the implementation to ground truth these GDST standards as they've been developed. Thai Union's investment in both CEAS and the GDST demonstrate our commitment to seeing that the seafood industry across the world operates in a way that is responsible to the environment. We also believe the value of this mission of sustainability and transparency to our business. That said, we fully recognize that we cannot achieve this alone. We rely on our supplier partners to provide credible information to us, and we rely on our customers to convey the stories of our products to the public and maintain strong standards. Every member of the chain is critical. Our contributions become amplified when every seafood company does their part as well. Ocean stewardship and human welfare are universal responsibilities. Everyone can, everyone should be finding their way to continue to improve. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening to our session today. I'm going to turn it back over to David Shore to answer questions.
Thank you, Roxanne, and thank you to all of our panelists for your excellent presentations. I apologize to listeners that some of the audio quality may have been disrupted, but that's how it goes with these distributed webinars. I want to especially thank Roxanne for the excellent set of case studies showing the complexity of a global supply chain and the effort it really takes to make information flow across it, and the role of GDST. We'll now turn to our questions and answers session. Please feel free to join it by writing any questions you may have into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We've already received quite a few of them, and I don't know if we'll have time to reach them all. We will get to as many of them as we can in the time we have. Winnie Ye of the World Economic Forum, who has helped put this panel together, will help us select questions and read them out. Let me just point out that for this question and answer session, we will also be joined by Brian Hitchcock, the Executive Director of the Global Food Traceability Center at IFT, who is my counterpart in co-leading the GDST Secretariat. So I'll just put up the slide here of everybody on the panel so you can be reminded who you might want to address your questions to. And if all of the panelists could turn on their videos, if you have a video connection, I know some of you don't, we'll turn to Winnie to get the first question. Thanks very much. Go ahead, Winnie.
Great. Lots of questions have come in. The first question is about small-scale fisheries. This question says, can small-scale fisheries really be part of the digital revolution at scale? I think it's addressed to, David, would you like to address this to Ben?
Yeah, that's fine. Ben and others can take it on. But Ben, can small-scale fishery digitization, like what you're doing in the Philippines, can that be taken to scale globally?
Yeah, I think it can. You know, one of the fascinating things we've learned in TX and Streamer when trying to roll out, you know, really progressive technology that deals with blockchain, that deals with, you know, data economies and unlocking the value of data, is that actually the places, the countries that are willing to embrace this stuff are actually the sort of emerging countries, the developing countries. And there's a few examples of success stories of this. So in the Philippines, coins.ph, which is a digital wallet, has around 6 million users now that are paying for their phone bills and electricity bills using Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash. Union Bank has, I think, 4 projects running at the moment that use a stable coin, which is a form of cryptocurrency on the blockchain. In Africa, we're seeing lots of projects. So I think actually, when you're using progressive technology like this, and there's, you know, a way to deliver added incentives to these people, you know, unlock more types of income or finance them, then absolutely, I think this stuff can take off. Yeah.
Excellent, Ben, thank you. I'll just add from the NGO perspective, these incentives, the economic incentives through monetization or access to credit, such as what Tracy was doing, the connectivity through markets, which is what GDST is all about, returning value through traceability to these apps. These are fundamentally important. I would say that from WWF's perspective, there really also has to be policy behind it to take it to scale, and that very likely we're going to need to face the need for governments and aid agencies to make significant investments. One of the SDGs is to get rid of subsidies that harm overfishing. It would be good to recognize that getting rid of bad subsidies doesn't mean getting rid of good subsidies, and an excellent target for subsidies in the future would be to support the digitization of developing country communities. What's the next question, Winnie?
Right, the next question is, once a company has pledged, how challenging would you say it is to implement GDST standards?
How challenging is it to implement GDST standards? I think that's an excellent one to turn to Brian Hitchcock, whose IFT organization is doing a lot of work to support the implementation of GDST. How does implementation look, Brian, and what's available to help people accomplish it?
Yeah, this is an excellent question and a very important topic. And throughout the journey that we've been engaged with the global dialogue over the last 3 years, we put a lot of effort into thinking about the customer and how they're going to go about implementing this in the system. And so as we've gone through an extensive piloting program and writing the standards themselves, we've built in flexibility, we've built in tools and capabilities for folks to engage with technical experts to access information that they can use on a self-service basis. So implementing this is a challenge. As we heard from our esteemed panelists today, they have a lot of complexity in their systems, but we try to create an environment that we can, smooth that as much as possible.
Great, Brian, thank you. I don't know if Metro would like to join that question as well. You guys are sitting downstream on the supply chain. How do you see the challenges of implementation? How do you see what it's going to take to get to implementation over time?
Yeah, so if I may, thanks for the question, David. I think, well, as I said, based on our experience, the main challenge is, to get the data in a good data quality and to have the data, let's say, regularly updated in a system. And we believe that the more, let's say, joining this approach and following the aligned key data elements and critical tracking events and working on this interoperability issue, the easier it will be, right? I think important is that we do have this alignment and that we start with something, and then the, let's say, seamless data flow will happen.
Great, thank you. I'll just cap it off by saying if we have company representatives in the audience participating today, if you have any interest in this, the GDST has developed a set of tools to help companies analyze the challenge of implementation. Please reach out to us and we'd be happy to discuss further. Winnie, you have another question.
Yes, the next question is about the importance and impact of traceability. This person asks, what processes are in place if any unsustainable practices are found in supply chains of the companies?
Excellent. So I think obviously we'll turn to Thai Union and Metro to talk about that as well. Maybe Tom will come in, but let's start with Roxanne. Roxanne, you guys have done a lot of work at Thai Union to do risk reduction in your supply chain. What do you do when you find a risk or a problem that you have to address?
So, I mean, I think to address the first part, just what kinds of commitments we have in our supply chain. And one of the big ones we have is a commitment for all of our tuna products to reach the Stewardship Council standard by way of FIPS. And so our global goal is that 75% of our tuna sourcing globally will be either in a fishery improvement project or meeting the MSC standard by the end of this year. And we are actually ahead of schedule on that target. So it's going well and is really supported by the traceability work that we being able to know, you know, that the products that we're getting are coming from these fisheries, either in project or in the Marine Stewardship Council certification. And then as far as if there are difficulties in meeting that commitment, the way we manage that typically, you know, through these relationships. So if I'm working with our sourcing team, we have to match, you know, policy against these relationships with our suppliers. So we work with them to make sure that they are on track to, you know, meet the objectives of the improvement project, and then provide support to them. I hope that is your question.
Thanks, Roxanne. I think I'll turn to Metro again. I don't know if it would be Andrea or Britta, but you guys are a major purchaser. You purchase thousands of products in different categories from I don't know how many different vendors across the globe. What are you able to do to, if your systems do identify a problem with a particular vendor or a particular supply chain?
Yes, thank you, David, and I will take that question now. So, and also thank you, Roxanne, because you already mentioned something where we can build on. We have a similar target on looking at 80% of our fish and seafood being certified by either MSC, an equivalent program, or also a fishery improvement project. So, and actually we are in the supply chain a little bit later. So we ask our direct suppliers like EG, Thai Union, or other fish suppliers for these certifications. I think the beauty of traceability, but also the downside is that you know exactly everything that's coming up. And I think this is really, that's something that's challenging. On the one hand, it's really great because we say we want to show our customers everything, but we also want to show them that everything we do right. And so in environmental part, we can really rely on certifications. On the social side, it's even harder. Actually, talking about tuna and about social compliance, we are on the way there, but I think we all know, and that's also part of our work in GTA and together here with the Sustainable Supply Chain Initiative of the Consumer Goods Forum, to find some certification schemes that are reliable for social compliance, and also look here at this, let's say the good thing of that the products meet these requirements, but this is even harder today, and therefore that's also a challenge we have, of course, David.
Thank you, Andrea. Again, from the NGO perspective, I'll just say we've seen many times that the companies that take the risk of being leaders in transparency are often punished in the public eye for things that are discovered in their supply chains far more than the companies who refuse to take the risk of transparency. And so it is something that we really appreciate. The need for systems in place to identify red flags and respond to them was one of the things that was at the heart of identifying the KDEs, the key data elements in the GDST standards. The goal of those standards is not only to list data, but to set standards for what data quality and data verifiability should look like. The theory behind the GDST is that we can raise the floor and set a basic standard so that everybody has to meet certain level of transparency within the supply chains, and companies that are taking the risk of transparency early on aren't punished for their good deeds. Winnie, do you have another question? We have about 5 minutes left.
Yes, here's a question directed at Ben. Are the microcredit loans in the framework linked to sustainability criteria?
I saw this question pop up. It's a great question. So when we first met Union Bank to talk about Tracy, we obviously alluded to the fact that there's diminishing fish stocks, and we wanted them to then issue microloans to these fisher folk, and their entire livelihoods depend on them being able to fish. So we're sort of like waving the red flag at Union Bank, like fish stocks are reducing, but can you issue microloans to these people? And sure, they'll pay the loans back. So an important factor for the bank is actually knowing that the fisher folk are fishing using sustainable practices, and that the fish stocks aren't going to run out. So it's kind of, it's very interesting now, because with Tracy, we're rolling it out at the FIPS, the Fisheries Improvement Projects with WWF. And Union Bank wants to not only have the trade data, but also have the traceability data to see that the fisher folk are really acting sustainably, because effectively they feel more comfortable, or yeah, I guess more comfortable that the loans will be able to repay. So yes is the answer to your question. The fisher folk have to act sustainably.
Then thank you. Winnie, do you have another?
Great, yes. Here's an interesting question. What is the impact of COVID on the discussion of traceability and responsible supply chains?
Oh boy, that's a big one. And Brian, I'll give you a warning. I'm going to bring you in on this because that cuts across the food industry. I'll ask various panelists to answer this. I'll just start by saying that one of the things we know through the GDST, because the GDST brings together so many different companies, different parts of the world, different parts of the supply chain, is that the impact of COVID on seafood production has been extremely variable. Of course, everyone is suffering. Some people are suffering way more than others, particularly in some developing country exporter communities. But Brian, can I ask you to jump in? What is the relevance of COVID to this discussion of traceability now?
Sure. So let's start a little bit just that that everyone sees the broader impact on the food food ecosystem as an essential business worldwide, and how we've evolved to such a global supply chain and a just-in-time supply chain. So we look at this from a lens of any disruption is called to put some spotlight on some of the inefficiencies or complexities in those supply chains and how they can be disrupted. When we take a step back and think about what traceability systems create, they create a lot of insight into supply chains and how they operate, and provide significant data that can be leveraged to predict or gain insights into where there may be efficiencies or risks. And so, as we build out these systems, we believe that supply chain actors across all the different stakeholders will be more capable at being able to react to future disruptions.
I'll turn quickly to Roxanne and then quickly back to Metro for the last words. Is COVID making you more interested or less interested in traceability?
More, yes, definitely more.
Why? Say 2 words about why, and then we'll call it a day, because I think we're at the bottom of the hour.
Roxanne, you go first.
How are you?
Roxanne, go first, and then I add on.
Well, we've found that we've been working for a long time in traceability. Just from a kind of consumer standpoint, there's a lot more interest now than ever in where their food is coming from and telling that story. People, whether it's that they have more time or just more interest in the impact to our food system. People are really looking for that information. So it's actually very motivating at this time for improving our traceability and then making sure we can tell that story all the way down to the consumer level.
Andrea, the last word to you, few words, just very few.
Yeah, thank you. Building on that, we see actually the same. COVID increased the focus on resilient and sustainable supply chains. Customers are asking for it. And in addition to transparency and sustainability, the whole topic of safety of supply chain will really be a big one. To really secure our supply chains will be one of the main outcomes of COVID, and traceability and transparency helps here.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody. So my last word, traceability, a subject that sounds technical and wonky, but that is essential to delivering environmental and human value around the world. Thank you very much, Ben, Tracy, Tom, Andrea, Britta, Roxanne, and Brian. Thank you, Winnie, for all the work that you and your colleagues have done to help organize this panel. And Winnie, unless there was something else we should do, I think the time requires us to close this panel and thank all of our audience for participating. I'm sorry we were not able to get to all of your questions. Please contact us on our various websites if you would like to engage in further dialogue. Winnie?
Great, thank you everyone. I'm going to close the webinar now.
Thank you. Good day, everybody. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.